Hello. I should be live. Let me know in the comments if you see and hear me just fine. Let's see. That should work. If you are here live, let me know. If you're catching this on the replay, also hashtag replay. So let me know that you are showing up for these and that you are finding the content of value so I can actually make sure that you are getting the maximum benefit out of being with me. If you have any other questions, definitely drop them as they come up for you and I will be connecting with you. Hi, Rebecca. I would want to talk to you today about the foundations about getting started with writing your blog posts. And we're going to go ahead and start from the very beginning as if you don't even have a blog or website up at all. And then we'll be going through all the steps. I've broken it down to 13 steps for getting yourself up and running with new blog content so that you can identify where you are at and help you move forward with where you need to go. We're trying to keep things simple here. I'm all about making content marketing simple for you because there's so much moving parts to this. Let's break it down. Right? So, what is a blog post? There is a lot of different ways to put together a blog post. And ultimately, it's just a landing page on a website that is for people to read your content. You might have a podcast episode that plays in that page. You could have a YouTube video embedded into that page. So really, a blog post can be any form of content that is available on your website. It doesn't have to be written, but that is what most people traditionally think of when they're talking about blog posts. So what makes a good blog post? Google, Bing, and all the other different types of search engines that you may be using all want to provide valuable content to your ideal clients who are looking for answers to the questions that they have. If your content answers the question and it is among the best options out there, that is what makes it good content. And they'll bring it up to the top of the search results, and you are essentially going to be answering the direct question. Perhaps they didn't quite word the question correctly, so what is their intention with that search that they made? And then you're going to answer any follow-up questions. And it could be follow-up questions within that post, or it could be follow-up questions answered in a similar post that you've linked to from that content. You're going to be engaging them in stories, examples, some analogies. You want to make it so that it is actually interesting to consume. It is easy to take in the information. So you got your headers and subheaders that help break the content apart to be able to quickly skim the content, making sure you do actually answer the question. Then you'll want to make sure it's visually appealing. You don't have giant blocks of text, which could be just a really long sentence, or it could be your paragraphs are too long. But essentially, you want to break up the content so it's easier to consume and keep scrolling through or scrolling down the page so that it's easier to take in the information. And finally, the experience on the page. While right this moment is not a factor, it is going to be a factor in the May update for Google on the search algorithms. The user experience is going to become one of the top priorities on your website. What that means, technically speaking, is that on-page SEO is more important than off-page SEO. But ultimately, what that means to you is that you want to make sure that you are creating content that is focused for the reader to enjoy. How many clicks does it take to get through to the final product? Do you have dead links to deteriorate? Do you have too large of images that are taking more than 3 seconds to load on the page. These are just a few different examples of what may improve or decrease the user experience on your page. Again, that update is coming in May of this year. Google already went ahead and gave everyone notice, actually this last year, that it was going to be coming up. This is one of those big updates, just like how they made an announcement about search results prioritizing the mobile optimized websites to the tops of the search ranks. That update was made in advance to it actually being implemented so that businesses like you and I have time to actually do something with the content before actually getting hurt by it, because Google doesn't want to hurt us. They want to provide the best value experience. So that's ultimately what makes a good blog post. So in the content, the process of how to create a blog post for where you're at, you could be brand new, don't even have a business launch. So we'll go ahead and cover that real quick. And then I'll go in through the actual process of the writing and what you do afterwards. So first, and actually the most important, is understanding your audience. Who are you writing for? What is the point of the content that you are creating? You need to make sure that you're providing value. But what is valuable to your audience? This could help with understanding your branding. And if you need help with that, I am not your branding expert, but I can give you referrals for those. But ultimately, you want to make sure that you are in the position to be able to say what it is that your audience is thinking as if you were reading their journal when they weren't looking. That is how inside their head that you need to be with your kind of content. If they have a problem with coming up with the solution that you provide, perhaps it's how do they lose that last 5 pounds. Well, they might actually be having 6 pounds as their issue. And not too many people talk about 6 pounds as opposed to 5 or 10 pounds, right? But those little tweaks in the messaging could be actually ideal because you're actually already talking to someone who is giving you that kind of feedback as to what makes it, your messaging can be tweaked just a little bit to make a difference. Let's see. Number 2 here is your creating your blog domain. This is just your website. For example, mine is stephaniegary.com. You might have something like purpleproducts.com. And I want to clarify, because some old information has said that your domain name is a factor in your Google ranking. It is not. I got that information verified from Google itself. Your domain name has no bearing on how you rank on your website, whether you use your own name, a company name, if you're using a product name for your domain, it is all valid. Then the only consideration you need to do when you're picking out your blog domain is if you are inclusive of what you want to do in the future. While purpleproducts.com may work right now, what if you decide you want to sell blue products too? Are the people interested in blue products going to be able to trust you when you have it in your domain that you are all about purple products? It's just something to consider depending on your specific niche, and examples I can use with that. Moving on to number 3 is customizing your blog's theme. Again, this is one of those branding things. If you want to understand the color psychology, perhaps just the organization, fonts, typefaces, the sizes, there are a lot of different things that can go into what makes your website aesthetically pleasing and what is actually going to help convey your overall message to the audience. Number 4, this is where I feel my expertise definitely comes in here. This is where we're going to be identifying your first blog post topic. you have a certain amount of offers that you have, whether it is only one offer that you focus on at first, or if you are currently at 3 offers, it could be 10 offers. It ultimately doesn't matter how many you have as long as it works for you and your business. But when it comes to the content, you need to have at least 1, if not 3 or more pillar posts per offer. It's going to be very closely related and actually linking over to your offer. So for example, if you are a health coach and you provide a custom workout routine, you might have a pillar post about how to get started working out and making it a routine. You might have another post about how to do this certain workout routine for ultimate cardio blast. And then you could have a third that is, let's see, the ultimate working out without a gym guide. So those are 3 different examples for a health coach specializing in a workout offer where the content is talking about workout. And they are pillar content because they are talking about a broad topic. Cardio blast, there's a lot that can go into that. Workout routine for working out without a gym. That could be a lot of content in that. And I don't remember what my first example was, but ultimately it's a lot of content that can go into it and then can be broken up into further smaller posts later. This video, the amount of content I have lined up here is an example of what a pillar post would look like in written format. The smaller blog posts, you'll want to have 10 to 12 blog posts per pillar post. So your cardio blast routine, you could have a blog post for each specific workout that you're doing in that routine. So we'll just use a nice round number of there's 10 different exercises to use in your cardio blast routine. And so there's 1 blog post per exercise on easy, medium, and advanced, and how to use that particular workout into your own routine. And then doing that for each different workout makes it so that you have 10 blog posts that match at least 1 pillar content that relates to the original offer. So as we dive into this, we can take a look at your own content, what your offers are, what are the pillar posts that you can talk about, and then how can you break down those pillar posts to talk about in more detail a specific part of what is already expressed in the pillar post. If word numbers help you, the blog posts are typically somewhere at about 1,000 words. It is not a hard science, but it's an art really on this one. Your pillar posts are going to be one of those big beefier, so maybe a few thousand words. And if you're thinking of in video format, the average person talks at about 150 words per minute. So that makes your 10-minute video your blog post length, and in a 30-minute video could be your pillar post. So as you identify your first topic, you want to go ahead and do your research, because even though you are an expert at what you do, you need to make sure you're covering all the search intentions that everyone is trying to get answered when they make those initial searches. So how to lose 5 pounds is quite broad. And while you have answers to that as a health coach, you might want to take a look at what's already out there and what's ranking as the highly valuable content. What do they talk about? And you're not wanting to read the content thoroughly, you're just wanting to look at the questions that they highlight in their headers. the outline, if you will, of their content to see what could be included in your own content. You can do this with the top 2 or 3 posts, or you could use a tool to help you do more. I like to use a tool to help me search the top 20 search results. That's Phrase, F-R-A-S-E. But it's not necessary. You can totally do this manually, and it does not have to take up that much time to do this, to make sure that you are answering the user's search intention when they're on Google looking up the answer to what you're writing about. And then with that, you're also going to double check your facts. So as I had mentioned previously, that the average person speaks at about 150 words per minute, I had to double check that to make sure I'm not giving the wrong information or perhaps outdated information. Because of how many times we pause and making sure that we are conscious about what we say that comes out of our mouth, sometimes it can be slower, therefore fewer words, or it can be faster, therefore more words. That's why it's a ballpark average on that one. All right. And I did not write this down, but I want to make sure that I help you with this one. If you are having trouble still with coming up with that very first topic idea, you can use Answer to Public to talk about, or to enter in the niche that you're in to figure out which one might be the best option. You can get free four searches per day with that. So if you have different offers, you're not quite sure which one to focus on first or what content would relate to that offer, you can actually do a search on there real quick with one of each and see what kind of answers come up. It will come up with all sorts of questions that are asked, some comparatives like diet versus exercise kind of comparison, the versus, the and, there are some attachments that you could find with those. It gives you a lot of good ideas for kind of content to write. In addition to that, you can also use Google search result pages. Like just type in Google, and if you really need to, you can go ahead and do it in an incognito window or like a secret session and type in your topic that you're curious about looking to rank for. See what shows up, and on Google itself, they will tell you what people are already looking at. That's in the People Also Ask box. That's in the suggested related searches. There are a few other spots I am now blanking off the top of my head, but it's essentially there's 3 spots on the Google search result pages that'll tell you the type of content that's already being looked for. If you have a keyword research tool that happens to show up on the search page, it is guaranteed by Google itself that the content that is pulling up the People Also Ask and related searches, if they say your tool is saying that there's no other searches happening for that, that is a lie. There's someone that is looking for it. Otherwise, Google would not suggest that search. All right. Next, we're going to come up with a working title. This could be whatever keyword phrase you found. And a great example of this is I was thinking of how to write a blog post. That was my idea. And then I did a quick search and found how to write a blog post for beginners is something that isn't really deeply dove into. So I wanted to go ahead and do that. Then as I'm working through this, I am keeping in mind I am writing about how to write a blog post, but it's also for beginners, so I can know what kind of focus I need to maintain on this. And then I go through the rest of the process and I'm working on the final title of the blog post when it's closer to actually finished. So come up with a working title to help you focus on your content. Number 6 here is writing your intro, that introduction paragraph, or maybe it's 3 paragraphs. Basically, the introduction is everything that's before the first header, after the title, before the first header. And that it can include a story, because people like to read stories. They like to hear stories. It could be a joke. So if you're really into having humor in your content, that could be the place to do it. It could be a very interesting or intriguing fact that someone would want to know more about. Excuse me, making all sorts of noises. What you want to do in the introduction, though, is to make sure that you are empathizing with the reader, that your content knows where they're at, and that you will help them get to where they want to be by the end of the blog post. Number 7 here is to organize your content in an outline. And there are a few different types of outlines you can use to actually make sure that you understand exactly where your content is going to go by the time you're done creating it. There are here 6 different formats of what kind of blog posts are really popular and working. You got the list-based post. That's kind of a 1, 2, 3, or it could be a point 1, point 2, point 3. A really recent example is perhaps what to do in Mexico. Then that could be a bunch of bulleted points, or it could be an order of the how to write a blog post. There is a step, an order to go through to get through to the end. Thought leadership post is the next one here, and that is going to be one where you kind of stake your claim on your stance on something in the industry. It could be you are busting some myths and like why it's wrong and where you stand on the particular topic. That is really good for attracting the right kind of people and repelling the wrong kind of people. Well, there is a few different examples I can come up with here, but politics seem to be what's themed here at home. So if you wanted to write anything political at this point, then that would be attracting the people who think like you and then repelling the people who don't think like you. I think we're pretty clear on like what that kind of result would be as far as politics. But that applies to every niche, everything that you have. If you have a strong opinion about something, perhaps 10,000 steps a day is a totally unrealistic and unhealthy goal, then maybe that is something that you'd want to write about and why you think that is the case and make your argument. That would be an example of a thought leadership post that's within like the health niche. Then we got the curated collection. And with curated collection, that can be one of 2 different ways. Way number 1 that a lot of people are familiar with when you're coming off of Pinterest is that it's a collection of different sources of information into one. This can be from sourced by Pinterest, can be sourced by Google, can be sourced by YouTube, but it's going to be a bunch of different source information on a similar content. This could be, for example, let's go with our homeschooling. If you have a need for a science-based program, there is an option to go to a post that has a list of 10 different science-based programs for elementary kids. And then you're curating the information together, but you didn't necessarily have to do any of the work of creating that content on the other side. However, you could curate your own content. This would be very similar to a pillar post, but this might also look like a get started post. If you have a bunch of content that you need to go ahead and get refreshed, not in the mood for creating a brand new filler post, then perhaps a curated post would be more ideal for you. And that could be a list of ideas based on the content you already have created. Then you have a slideshow presentation that is actually becoming more common. That one I have seen created for a visually based demographic, or not demographic, visually based niche where fashion, beauty, perhaps travel, these are the different types of niches where you'll want the visual presentation. And in the slideshare, it can be a quick paragraph that describes the photo, and then you can go to the next photo. You can make it so it's actually, a slideshow, so you get one picture at a time, or you can have it so it goes down the page and you have all the pictures available at once. You just need to scroll down the page. Next would be a newsjacking article. That is going to be really trending topics. You could find some trending topics at trends.google.com. You can look at the trends section for Pinterest. For YouTube, there's a trending section. Even our social media platforms have some trending spots to go find the most common topics that is happening right now. So then you have finally the infographic post. And that's kind of what it sounds like. It is a blog post where it is a picture where all the information is inside the picture itself. You often find these on Pinterest or on the larger websites, but it works really well for some for smaller businesses as well, where if you have the template to work off of, like in Canva, or if you have the graphic design know-how, then you can go ahead and do this yourself. And it's really good for putting a lot of information together in a graphic visual format. So it is easier to process more information in a quicker time. So it really depends on what kind of content that you're looking to create as to which one of those might be the best. Those are the top 6. That is not all of them. Those are just the first ones I came across to go ahead and make sure to touch on with you real quick. You'll find the list-based, the thought leadership ones are the ones that are going to really set you apart as far as establishing your authority. The SlideShare and the newsjacking can help you become more of the trendier type of topics out there. And then your curated and infographic can really help you get more visibility across different platforms, because more people are going to be seeing it, especially when you share with the other content creators that you share their content within your content. They are more likely to share that content for you. And same thing with infographics. A lot of people just like looking at photos. So once you've got that figured out which one you want to do, then you'll go ahead and actually go in and write out your content based on how you outlined it already at that point. Whether it was step 1, 2, 3 already figured out, and then you just explain what each step means. If it is data points that you need just a quick blurb, you've got a bunch of photos that you need to go ahead and enter in those descriptive paragraphs for them. Ultimately, this is where you already know your steps, so answering your own questions that you put up in the outline will actually go pretty smoothly, because this is no longer a blank page staring at you, intimidating you to come up with a magical answer right away. No, we did the outline first, so it is much less intimidating at this point. So then step 9 is to proofread and edit your post. I would love to say that it is super important, but a lot of people actually do understand that some errors will come through. and that proofreading and editing all the errors out is difficult and sometimes too much to ask for some content creators. There have been a few brands that have chosen to have specific stylistic choices that makes them unique. Reasons behind it have varied, but it could be, for example, an intentionally lowercase all letters. There is no capital letter anywhere, from the first letter of a sentence to the letter I in the word I. Like, there's all different types of examples there for different choices as to how you might choose to write the way you do. But really important things I want you to make sure to consider when you're proofreading and editing your content is to use bullet points. And the reason I say that is actually the point of making sure your content's skimmable. When someone first shows up on your blog post, they're going to quickly take a look through and to see if you answer their question in the first place. If you even address what their question is, then they'll take time to actually read more of your content. But if you don't even talk about it, they're going to go right away. They're going to look for something else to read that will help actually solve their issues, their question that they have. So bullet points on numbered lists, those are going to be really good to help people visually, quickly digest information about what you talk about. Next is to avoid repetition. I know you do it, and I do it, and anyone else that I know does it. But on that first draft of all the content that's created, you have certain words or phrases that you repeat a lot. That can be detrimental if it becomes more distracting than it is a value-added phrase that you use. So you want to make sure that you cut back on the repetition to make sure that it is actually adding value to it, because that is where cliches have come in and become cliches that no one wants to write and no one wants to read. That is going to be part of this kind of content that you want to make sure to change or eliminate if possible. Next, you'll want to read your post out loud to yourself. If you're in a room by yourself, that's fine. Read your post out loud. Your reading of it will make sure that your ear actually catches how much the flow of the content from beginning, middle to end actually makes sense. Does that order work? You'll find that you catch some other errors in the process of doing that, but ultimately the point of that one is to make sure that it works from beginning, middle to end. Having someone else read your work, having someone else read your work will actually help, because they don't know what you were trying to write, so they don't have their brain messing with them to say, oh, you wrote what you intended to say, therefore you're going to read what you intended to write. Someone else has never seen it before. They're just going to read your word and take it at face value, and they'll catch whether a whole word was skipped, or if you seem to jump from one topic to the next with like no transition, realize, and they just got completely lost. So having that second perspective could be a child, could be an editor, could be a spouse, could be a totally random person that you talk to every so often, a biz bestie. There are different options for how that can work out for you, but ultimately just having someone else's perspective look at that will help you. If you don't have anyone else that you can rely on, make sure to leave yourself time between when you write and when you read. That way, you have the fresh set of eyes. But if you just finished writing and then all of a sudden you jump over to editing it, then it's not going to work out as well as it could if you just waited till the next day, or a minimum of 2 hours later. Okay. Keep sentences short and paragraphs shorter. So your sentences should be short because you're not writing a college thesis. You want to make sure that the sentence is very in length. So if it is a bunch of 5-word sentences all the time, and that's all the length that it happens to be, it will become a very monotonous piece of content to read. And it could be improved just by changing the sentence length. If we did nothing else, it could be drastically improved just by changing up some 3-word sentences, some 5-word sentences, some 10-word sentences. So your long sentences can exist, but you just got to keep in mind that you have some varying length and keep it shorter in general, just because we're trying to make sure that it is easy to read. Most people are reading from their phone. So that is, in addition, why keeping your paragraph shorter is important. You could have your paragraphs 4 lines, not sentences, lines long, and that would be almost filling up the entire phone screen with text. And we want to make sure that we are not having readers glaze their eyes over because they see a wall of text and it just goes on and on and on. Break it up for them, break up the paragraphs. It can be a 1-word paragraph. That is totally fine. You're going to make it easier so that they can keep up the flow. There have been a few different examples, such as in the description for this video, wherever we're at on this. I broke up a sentence so that at one point it was a finishing word to the sentence was its own paragraph, because that is just one way to make emphasis for what I was saying at that point. Let's see. Oh, and final point on this one is don't be afraid to make cuts or adapt on the fly. What that means is that while you may have outlined something to include a lot of stuff, you will find as you are creating things that your flow of content means that you need to cut things. I am going to be speeding through some of my tail end things just because I have other content that I will be going over. I want to make sure I had a fairly thorough section here about the beginning stages because this is targeting to beginners. If I chose to, because it is getting on long, then I could actually totally cut out the last few steps. But we're almost there. I don't plan on doing that. All right, so number 10, because remember we had 13 steps here. Number 10, we have including visual elements. So at this point, we've talked about paragraphs and sentences and headers and stuff to break this up. Images are a very common one, but it is not a requirement as much as it is a felt necessity. And that can be your featured image on the blog post. It can include embedded YouTube videos. It could be a table or a chart or some other way of displaying data in a more visually digestible manner so that the content can be broken up. It's not just all words, and that it's still appealing to actually consume the content. Number 11. Now this is one that gets forgotten, but I need to make sure that you know this is important. Every single piece of content you create, blog post, social media post, every single post you create has to include a call to action. It doesn't matter what kind of call to action, but it has to include a call to action. You could just ask for some engagement. Hey, drop a comment. You could ask someone to give you some feedback. Let me know in the DMs if you want to know about this. You could ask someone to book a free breakthrough session with you so that they can figure out how to work with you. They could do an email sign-in. If you give me your email address, I will send you this gift to your inbox. These are the kind of call to actions you typically see in a blog post, but whatever it is, each piece of content needs to end with a call to action so that you tell your reader what they're supposed to do next. And yes, it's totally acceptable to be like, hey, no action necessary here, but go check out more information over on that post over there, because it is the next logical piece of content to consume before they know what to do next. And then we touched on the title earlier. Now we are readdressing the title here. If you don't like your working title and you think there is a better way to make it catchier, snappier, more intriguing, then go ahead and work on that now. Because how to write a blog post for beginners could be improved. I didn't care at this point in time, I'll be quite honest with you. You can use a tool from CodeSchedule, Headline Analyzer, to grade your blog post titles, and it can essentially let you know whether your titles are likely to perform really well. And this is all based on data and statistics, a lot of research. It's a really useful tool to just basically practice writing headlines. I highly recommend it. And that's codeschedule.com/headline-analyzer. Okay. Number 13 here. Finally, yes, we're optimizing your content. And again, I'm going to go over this real quick because ultimately you're a beginner. Optimizing content is kind of the last thing you want to do when you're going back to the content. So you've published it, you've shared it, you've made sure everyone was aware of it, whether you emailed it, you put it on social media. Going back to the content is when you want to optimize it. However, it will look like your topics or tags that you want to have so that help you with the organization. This could include updating your meta description, which you can use tools like Yoast SEO if you're on WordPress, or Squarespace, and I forget the other one I've worked with. They have an actual integration on their page so you don't have to have extra tools to use, where you can write the meta description. That's just the content that you see on the Google search results page to tell you what the content's about. The page title and headers is another spot that you could optimize. Again, this is just going to be what is showing up as far as your content title, and then what shows up on the actual Google search results. You can optimize your anchor text, which is the words used to act as a hyperlink to another piece of content. Your anchor text should not be the keywords you use in that same post. It should be more related to a hint as to what the next piece of content is about. For example, if this post was about how to write, but the next one is how to proofread, I might highlight how to proofread, insert the hyperlink to that next piece of content in this piece of content to be able to send you over. Okay. And then mobile optimization. Hopefully you've already got this down at this point. If you are not optimized for a mobile user to look at your website, it's already hurting you, and you probably should get that resolved. Most themes these days, though, already have this integrated, and so you want to make sure that it's just your on-page stuff is already optimized. Short paragraphs, easy to read. You're not going to be really complicated with all of your sentence lengths. I mean, nothing's 30 words long or anything. So that is actually all I have here. So do you have any questions for me? I just threw a lot of stuff at you, wanting to make sure that you get all this information and that I didn't necessarily take all day. I'm going to take a drink of water at that. Darn that. All right. Well, I am not seeing a question coming in right now, but if you... Okay. Thank you, Rebecca. Not now. I do look forward to talking to you on Tuesday. So if you have any other questions that do come up in the meantime, go ahead and let me know in the comments. You can send me a DM. I'm definitely available there. And if you want to know more about how I can help save you time planning, creating, and updating your blog posts so that your content can live longer in search results, so that you can attract more clients, let me know. You can fill out the form to schedule a free content breakthrough session at www.stephaniegary.com/breakthrough. And I will help you make sure that your message is being shared further, living longer, so that you are not having to deal with that content churning sensation, and you can actually bring in more clients to help build you up. All right, thank you. Have a great night.